Thank you.
Welcome to the presentation meeting of the Trieste Next 2024. I'm Sophia, and as you might have noticed, I'm an AI-generated avatar. Today, I'll present you this edition of the festival. Over the next 3 days, we will explore the horizons of intelligence. This is the theme of the 13th edition of the Scientific Research Festival. At Trieste Next, we will discuss both human and artificial intelligence, ethical boundaries, and the new frontiers science is facing. Where will artificial intelligence take us? What impact will it have on research? Medicine, robotics, astrophysics, food and nutrition, and the environment are just a few of the scientific fields we will delve into at Trieste Next. This is the central theme of Trieste Next, featuring over 100 events in English and Italian, the Literary Award for the Scientific Book of the Year, and 70 activities for schools. More than 300 internationally renowned speakers will be in Trieste. And don't forget to visit the 40 exhibition spaces and open labs in Piazza Unita. Before we welcome the guests of the next event, on behalf of the organizers and co-organizers, I would like to thank all the scientific institutions of Trieste, City of Knowledge, as well as the institutions that collaborated with us. A special thanks goes to the festival's main partner, the partners and content partners for their crucial contributions. Thanks also to the media and technical partners. Lastly, a heartfelt thanks to the 200 volunteers who made this edition possible. One final note. I'd like to remind you that the next session will last 75 minutes, with the final 15 minutes dedicated to your questions. Please also remember to check the updated event schedule on www.triestenext.t, which you can access via the QR code. Enjoy the event and have a great festival.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our panel, to ICGEB's panel on accessible intelligence at Trieste Next. I am Sannia Farrukh. I am a Pakistani PhD student from ICGEB, and I'll be your moderator for today. So, accessible intelligence, that is the name of this panel. And the name of the panel follows the common theme of the discussion as we just observed in the video. As the world is becoming a more and more complex place, there is a need for greater interdisciplinary studies and to bring together specialized knowledge from different fields to contribute more to the society. And that is going to be one of the focuses of our talks today as we discuss the journeys of these 3 scientists who transitioned into alternative career roles in science. So today we have with us Dr. Erick Mora from Roche. He's a South American scientist, and he will tell you about his journey himself. Then we have Dr. Nina Volf from Croatia, who's a patent lawyer at the moment, and patent lawyer trainee at the moment, and Dr. Giuseppe Marzio, who is a science communication specialist. Today's session, as you heard, will include 15 minutes of Q&A at the end, but as this is a more interactive session based on alternative careers in science, and as scientists, I'm sure you have a lot of pressing questions as well, we will be extending the Q&A session to the last 30 minutes of the talk. So if you have any questions, please note them down, and we will take them all at the end. So with that, I would start off our first question. So this question is addressed to all 3 of you, and you can answer one by one. But how did you choose your career paths after PhD, and what shaped your transition from research to your current roles? We'll start with Giuseppe.
Thank you. So the first step after my PhD was really due a mix of personal and professional reasons. The professional reasons was that I wanted to do a postdoc, and the personal reason was that I fell in love with a Dutch woman, and I went to Amsterdam for my postdoc. So it was a very serendipitous situation. And I was very much into this standard journey. You know, you do you go to university, you do your PhD, you do a postdoc, and then we'll see. Hopefully, something will happen on the way.
So I think that my story was a little bit different because actually I ended doing research by chance. I came from Croatia to do my master thesis in ICGEB at Dr. Zakinia's lab, and I just fell in love with research. I love the atmosphere of ICGEB. I like doing it. And when the opportunity to start my PhD occurred, I accepted it. But I have to say that before, I was always eyeing European Patent Office. So I'm not working there, but I kind of knew that there are already available some opportunities that are called alternative. Also, I don't like this word. And basically, after a few years in PhD, I still liked science, but I realized that I don't want to do bench work. And by chance, there were patent attorneys that were kind of managing ICGEB's portfolio that came to visit us and give a seminar. And there I networked with them, and eventually that actually also showcases the importance of networking, because when the opportunity arose there, I was the person that they contacted. And it's how actually I finished doing my traineeship in patent law. So maybe we can go into details later, because then again, it's again kind of long and long and extensive training, but still, like if you don't have the scientific background, you cannot enter that path, at least not in Europe.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank for the opportunity to be here today. I mentioned that I was part of the Trieste Next like around 7 years ago as a volunteer, so I had the experience to really bring to the town the science and try to explain to the community what we do in the labs, and this is something that I enjoy when I was here. And today, being 7 years, 8 years later, back as a speaker, sharing my experience on my professional journey is such an honor, because I struggled a lot when I was planning to decide what to do after my PhD, and having this opportunity for me is like giving back, paying back the support that I got when I was looking for opportunities. And actually it started like, it's actually a combination of what Giuseppe and Nina mentioned, because for me, I was clear that I wanted to do a PhD, that was no doubt about that. But after the PhD, I didn't want to go in the traditional path in academia and doing a postdoc. You plan something and then something else happened. In most of the cases, I end up doing a postdoc. But it was in the industry part where I didn't know what to expect, or I knew that I didn't want to do a traditional postdoc in academia, but then there were so many open questions about the industry or private companies, how they work. And I must say that I got really nice support in this transition, because always trying to ask people who are in this transition, or people who are already having the experience in the sector, can really clarify all the open questions that you have that can be stupid, like asking how is the organization inside a company, but when you are in this transition, it's very important that you really know where you want to go, because if you do not have it clear, then it makes more difficult. So my journey started like joining a program that was a transition program moving from academia to industry. I had a mentor here in Trieste, probably I hope is around, Miriana, who support me. I see her behind. And at that moment I remember that maybe it was so stupid, but I asked like 1,000 questions to her, because I didn't know how was the settings working inside a company. And I had the honor to really team with her and get the support, and she helped me with the transition of moving to a company. And then of course when I joined the company, it has been a big learning, because it's already 5 years that I'm there. I transitioned from being a postdoc, then a scientist, and since 2 years I'm leading a team focused on downstream processing. And you do not stop learning. It's like I started also 2 years ago doing an MBA, so probably many of you always ask, or I was wondering myself if I needed to do this in order to stay in the industry or not. And yeah, more than happy to share my experience in all these details.
Thank you all. So, Giuseppe, you are a science communication expert. In your words, could you walk us through what your job looks like, what you do, and how you applied skills from your PhD to your current roles? I understand as a science communication expert, you do need the scientific background, the scientific knowledge, but how do you translate that from incredibly specialized terms to something that non-science experts would also understand and can relate to?
Yeah, thank you. So once I did a very rough calculation, how long did my PhD, how many hours did it take? And I came to a rough number of 10,000 hours, more or less, 4 to 5 years, including some holidays. And if I look back, how many of those hours were spent on preparing me on how to communicate with non-scientists? Very few. Possibly I could count those hours on 2 hands. I don't know what your experience is. So I thought that is my opportunity. You know, there are so many scientists there with great ideas, great, real experts in their field, but they have not been prepared to share their ideas with the rest of the world. So that's where I decided to start my own agency, and I work with startup companies, very often founded by scientists, entrepreneurs that have a great idea, a great technology, and they need the world to get excited about it because they need funding to start up a lab, to start up a company, to hire people. They need to partner with the industry. They go to industry, so pharma leaders and share their ideas. Do you want to collaborate with us? They talk with the press to get attention for their vision for new therapies, new medicines. And you need a story for that. You know, only science will only take you so far. So that's what I do. I work with scientists that have a great idea, and I help them share their ideas with the world.
Dina, you mentioned that in your transition, one of the key parts was networking. So could you elaborate on that and maybe go into the challenges that you faced during this process and how networking essentially helped you out in this situation and how it still continues to be a big part of your career even now?
Okay, so maybe the first thing that I would say, because it's something that PhD students and scientists are not aware, is that you should always ask. People are really very willing to share their information. As Erick said, somehow it feels like giving back to community. And I think that once you are in the loop of doing research and, you know, let's say being on that path, somehow maybe you even feel a little bit guilty of exiting it or like taking another path. And that's when you really have to speak with a lot of people to be very informed and know which would be the next step to take. So actually I already started speaking with various professionals approximately at my 3rd year of PhD. And I also, as I said, I established a connection with this patent attorney that was managing ICGEB's portfolio because I just showed genuine interest. You are not sure whether someone will reply or not, but we should, you know, if we're genuinely interested, if we make an effort into writing a very nice emails in which we show interest, I think that people are 99% of the time willing to reply to our requests. That's more or less all about networking. I don't know if you have something else to address.
So you got, in a way, I don't want to say lucky, but in a way it was a coincidence and luck that the patent office was very involved, heavily involved in ICGB, and you had the opportunity to attend their seminar. So what advice, just in general from your experience, would you have for people who, one, may not have such opportunities, or two, may not be aware of such opportunities? Like, where does a first-year PhD student start from? Like, yes, they're focused on doing their PhD, but they're also focused on doing the PhD in a manner that contributes to their future careers, right? So where do they start from? What is your recommendation or advice for that? And that I open up to actually all the panelists. We'll start with Nina.
Actually, I think that at least at the time when I was doing PhD that year, ICGB was organizing a series of technology transfer seminars. So I think that you just have to become interested a little bit about everything, because I think that scientists, we are curious about everything. So I think you should be searching for like other seminars that are not talking only about the science, but also about I don't know, like technology transfer, IP, medical affairs. There are really like there is a bunch of opportunities that we are not aware of. And I think that now PhD students and especially master students are facilitated because there are a lot of podcasts that are addressing all these careers that were not available when I think I was a PhD student. So I would start from there. And then also what you really have to think about is that you are actually having a lot of transferable skills, because you on your daily basis, you are being your data analyst, you are being communicator, you are being presenter because you are presenting at journal clubs, you are presenting at lab meetings. I think that scientists really do have very well developed writing and communication skills that they are not aware of. And these are all the skills that are requested in industry, and especially in IP industry, where you have to clearly communicate facts. So.
I think I can only build up on what you said. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we do when we are doing our PhD is to underestimate our capabilities. I think we are doing a PhD, we are dedicated to work for 3-4 years in a specific project, and we think that this is the only thing that we have to offer when we apply for a job. And actually it's completely different. We are underestimating all the skills that we have developed, but you do it in parallel with your project and you don't realize. But being able to read papers, to present data, to discuss data, to really make it visible in a certain way that is very professional and scientific is something that we give by granted because we are doing a PhD and this is what is expected when we do the PhD. But in companies, there is a bunch of professionals with different backgrounds with the most common attitude or skills are not these skills. So when you introduce yourself to work in a company, it's a bit sad to say do not be passionate about your work, because it's very important that you show what you have done during your PhD. Maybe you, I don't know, characterize a cascade or something, and you took like 2 years to come up with a Western blot. That is very important, but it's more important that you show when you have the opportunity to go to an interview, for example, how able you are to work with different techniques, different methods, because at the end, these are the key points that, for example, for me, if I'm hiring someone in my team I'm looking for, I'm interested to know what was the path that you follow to reach your PhD, but the PhD is just a platform that gives you the stage to do something else. And I'm looking for someone who knows different techniques, for someone who knows how to present it, and you do not have to underestimate your own capabilities. Of course, be humble always, be like a person who who is open to learn, because at the end, when we are hiring someone, we are looking for someone who, of course, bring new knowledge to our team, but we are also looking for someone who is going to learn from our team, because at the end it's a exchange of knowledge, and any kind of knowledge is very welcome. Then on the other side, not only looking at the scientific skills, it's also very important that when we are in this transition search, you have to think that this is really important, is of equal importance or even more, your team building skills. Like, when you work in a company, at least in my experience, and maybe we can discuss here how it's for my colleagues, we need to be part of a team. You are not anymore the independent PhD student, postdoc who is working on a specific project. No one else is working with you. You are part of a team where you are responsible for a certain part, and then as a full team, we achieve the same goal. And it sounds like you are now a person who is doing some kind of work where you do not know the full thing, and actually it's not like that. You do not need to do everything. I'm so happy that now I don't have to culture cells and struggle 2-3 hours in the hood like culture in the cells. I get the supernatant for someone else who knows or has the expertise to do this job, and I just proceed with my part and I transfer it to the next team who is taking over. The important thing is that you understand the full process and you commit to the common goal. And in academia, we are not trained to have this formation. We are trained that we have to know everything and we have to defend it because this is the way. And actually, when you are working in a different settings, you have to be open to get support from others, share your knowledge, and be in a team. And can be very trivial, but it's really important when you work in industry, at least from my experience.
Yeah, so I also want to build on that. That was also because after my postdoc, I also went to work for the industry, and I worked in the industry for many years. That was for me very liberating, the feeling that you are part of a much bigger team. And so you have to trust other people to do part of the job, which you can never do on your own. And that was it felt very empowering. That was one of the best things for me of working in the industry. You know, being part of a big team, really solving big problems.
Maybe I can share an experience that I had, and it goes with the flexibility because, for example, when I just joined my company, I was like for 3 months working on a specific project. I entered as a postdoc. And then I was committed to really come up with results out of this project. So we were part of a team, but I was the responsible for that project. And one of the challenges that is very stupid, but the biggest challenge that I had was that I didn't have the freedom to try everything that I wanted. I had to learn how to convince colleagues to, I don't know, culture the cells in a different pH or add in a different feed or something that could probably help my work. As a PhD in the lab in academia, you discuss with your boss, and sometimes you can do by yourself. You say, I will give a try and let's see if it works or not. Working in a team, one of the challenges is that you have to discuss it in advance and somehow find a way to bring everybody together to the same project and say, okay, let's try, even if it doesn't make sense. But you have to involve everyone in a certain way that everyone is willing to do that. And it's not the case, because some people have been working for 20 years in such a position, and they say, no, the way to do it is this way, and I'm not going to try something different. But you say, okay, let's give a try. And a scientist, until you do not prove that this is not working, you still have the open question. So these are the small details that we have to learn, or at least in my experience that I had to struggle. I struggled a lot because I didn't know how to bring everyone to the same place and to do some work to support my ideas. And you have to do it, otherwise you do not go anywhere. You do not do cell culture anymore. So you have to team up with someone who can do it with you, and then you achieve what you want. And always be respectful, if you share data about something, always you need to be really careful who did what, because these are the most hot topics working in a company, since we're working in such a big teams. When you present something, you have to be really careful that everyone is involved, and you motivate them to keep working in the same project.
I think I would like to add something, because maybe I can offer a different perspective since I'm working in consultancy. So what I realize is that interpersonal skills are really very important. You have to be the person who others, in this case clients, are willing to work. It means that you have to be at service and you have to be available. So actually, there are no limits sometimes at your availability if you want to continue cultivating your culture. So it's maybe something that scientists are already used to do. Also, I think that's why I think that being, someone who is likable and do that one step more is really very important in industry or in consultancy. Also, where sometimes you are not as protected as you are in academia, because I think that in academia we are quite sheltered by our bosses. And sometimes I think that most of the time in industry you are at the first line. So your mistakes are not going to be covered by your professor, for example.
That's quite interesting. So a key theme today has been transferable skills. All three of you have independently talked about it, whether it be asking questions, networking, presenting, communicating data. But as ICGB is mostly hands-on biology, how would you suggest translating those skills into something? Like Nina doesn't work at the bench anymore, Giuseppe doesn't work at the bench anymore, Erick, I understand you still work at the bench, but you are also in the period of retransitioning into yet another field where you might not be working at the bench anymore. So how would you say that the bulk of your PhD experience, the bulk of your wet lab experience, how does that translate for an industrial employer who doesn't really care about whether you know how to run a Western blot or not?
So for me, a very important element to create trust with my clients is that they know that when they show me, when we have to create a story about their technology and their product and their big idea, and we look at the data, they see that I know what they are talking about. They show Western blots and they show whatever results, immunofluorescences and ERs, photos. I understand. So we speak the same language. It creates a basis of trust and understanding that on which we build the rest of the project. So that's, and I couldn't do without that. That's also my niche. I'm a communication specialist that does a very specific thing and has also done a very specific thing before. I've done a PhD in molecular biology on retroviruses. So, but that gives me, like it's a very small niche, but it creates a space where I am unique. And that's also my, not advice really, I don't like the word advice, but each of you is unique in your own way because of not only your PhD experience, but also your cultural background, your life experiences, the things you have read and seen and discussed about. And it's very special so you can try and fit in jobs that are already out there, that other people and companies are creating for you, and that's a very good way to do it. The other way to do it, and perhaps at a certain point you can consider it, is to look at the person you are and create the job, a job one of a kind, that you are the only one who can do this. And that feels very special because all of a sudden you are the only one people can go to. Oh wow, I really need Giuseppe. He is the only one who is a communication specialist doing storytelling, and he has a PhD on molecular biology on retroviruses. So if you create your own place where nobody can compete with you.
I think that my experience is similar because I'm working at intersection of science and law. Lawyer cannot do it, just a scientist cannot do it. And sometimes on your table arrive very complex articles that need to be written in a form of patent application. Of course, you cannot know everything. You are not an expert in everything. But if you have basic scientific skills that allow you to understand something because you did it, so you did that Western blot 1,000 times, you did PCR 1,000 times, it allows you to understand the language that is in the basis. And without that, I think we cannot, we cannot function in any job that is like a hybrid job.
Yeah, in my case, I work in R&D department, so it's really a lot of research and development. What I can say is working for such a company like Roche Diagnostics, that we are more than 8,000 employees in my site in Germany, is a place where you have so many opportunities. But it's also true that no one is going to come to you to say, Eric, this opportunity is for you. Like, at least the culture that we have in my company is like you are responsible for your own career development. And it depends on you how much ownership you take on the projects that you are. So some people are maybe more interested I want to be always in the lab and do bench work all my career because this is what I like and this is not wrong, this is okay. I mean, it always depends, as Giuseppe said, what makes you feel good. And if this is the work that you want to do, it's okay. In my case, I entered in the company, working in the lab, I was responsible of one project, but then it was a casualty somehow because I moved to Germany, for example, like 3 months before the COVID pandemic started, and I'm a virologist by training, so for me it was the perfect moment to really get involved in all the projects that were involving the development of the SARS-CoV-2 antibody tests. And it was an opportunity that I couldn't lose because I could have the chance to show the skills that I had, and I was kind of leading a project that was taking over the responsibility of bringing at the end a product to the market. And it's about this. It's like you take ownership. No one tells you to do that. But if you show your line managers, your team, that you are capable for doing that, and you should do that, like you prepare presentation without anyone asking you to do that, and you educate people on the topic, then people realize that you have a potential, and then you get involved in more and more projects. And you start working in a project, and then you end up working with 5 or 7 projects, and say, what I'm doing, this is too much work, I'm working too many hours. But this is somehow the price that you have to pay when you are at the beginning of your career, and then slowly, then you try to find the balance. Of course, always there are new challenges, because when you enter you are super excited, everything is fine, and you are learning a lot, and then you reach like a plateau and you say, okay, I want to start doing something else, I want to take another responsibility, and then the cycle starts again. You say, okay, what I want to do. No one is going to tell me to do something different, but if I want to change, then you are responsible for this change. And then you see what is out there, and up to you. You can stay in the same company, you can move to a different company. I think the possibilities are very big, and at the end you decide where you want to go. And I think someone mentioned about, for example, your cultural background, all this stuff. And this is, I guess, many of us here has different backgrounds. You come maybe from Italy or from any other places, like ICGEB is basically the core of many people coming from different parts of the world. And this is something that we don't realize, but the fact that you in your background has this experience, that you already left your hometown, you moved to live in a different country, you are able to adapt to a new culture, to new food, to new languages. This is something that we don't think about, but it's something that is already saying who you are, because you are a person who can adapt. And being a person who adapts is not only in terms of cultural background, but it's also, I don't know, you are working on a project, the project ends tomorrow and you have to work in something completely different. And you cannot do like a kid, like getting mad because of that and I will not do anymore. No, you have to change your mindset and say, okay, this is gone, now what is next? And this is the attitude that we have to have when you are working in such a environment. Because in academia is at least, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years working on the same project and you are the expert in that field. But in companies, it's more dynamic. You really move around many projects. You are not an expert anymore in virology field. Like in my case, I have been involved, I don't know, from cardiac diseases to diabetes or something else that in the past I never thought I was going to be involved in such a project. But at the end, it's super interesting because I end up learning things that I didn't even think about it in the past.
Thank you for bringing that up, because cultural backgrounds different cultural backgrounds and different perspectives is a key part of the ICGB experience in a whole. Because at the moment, ICGB encompasses around 66 member states, with 8 new member states being added this year. And these are just the member states. There are other collaborations that we have, other opportunities that we have for other countries who are not a part of it. So with that, and Trieste itself is a very multicultural hub. Like just the location of Trieste at the intersection of Slovenia, Vienna, Croatia, and Italy makes it a very multicultural and complex city with a lot of different cultures, a lot of different foods, and a lot of local traditional things. So based on that, my question to my panelists is that how did your experience at ICGB and your time in Trieste shape your PhD careers and led to these career transitions that have resulted in you ending up in your current careers? So in that, I would ask you to focus on both, like your experience at ICGB and your time in Trieste.
It's funny because when I was in ICGB, I wanted always to speak Italian because I was learning the language, for example, and no one was speaking to me in Italian. Even Italians were like always trying to speak in English. I said, why? I'm trying to do it, please help me. And that was my experience living here, and I was a bit disappointed about that. When I moved to Germany, everybody was speaking to me in German. I didn't know any word in German. And this was one of the main struggles because I was like, okay, I was in a place where everyone was speaking to me in English and I want to speak Italian. Now that I'm forced to speak German, I do not have anyone who is trying to speak English. So ICGB offers you this platform where you are in contact with many different backgrounds and you learn about many things. And I think these are the core values that you get being exposed to such an environment. And this is very person dependent and really open and really always looking for learning something different, tradition, culture. And this is something that for me moved me, and I'm passionate about it, knowing the world, knowing what others do different to what I know how to do from my experience. So having this flexibility or being exposed to this environment in ICGB give you the chance that when you are exposed in such a different environment, that can be actually the connection point with a future manager, because if you get to know someone who has been, I don't know, in Nepal, and they say, I know about Nepal because I had a colleague, and you start talking about something really random that doesn't make completely sense with the position that you are applying or whatever you are interested in, but you connect with other people in many of the cases. At the starting point is something that is not directly related to the goal that you want to achieve. So ICGB offers you this, like getting to know people from different backgrounds, getting to know different cultures, that for sure you can talk with someone else, that talking in the professional environment will help you in such a way. And I think it's always nice when you speak to someone and you connect. Can be by the language. Always language is the easiest way to connect with other people, because if you say I'm from France and I speak French, then it's like there is a switch in the way of talking. But it doesn't need to be only that way. You can connect in many other ways. You stay speaking English, but you connect by mentioning something And you have to take advantage of that. You have to be smart, to use these specific things because you want to, in a genuine way, always you have to be really careful. When someone tries to fake something or pretend to, it's so easy to catch up, to realize when someone is pretending that is interested about something when it's not really like that. So always be genuine in your intention to connect with someone, but make use of these small experiences that you have in the past, like when we focus on the cultural background, that can really be the bridge between a future connection.
So when I was in ICGEB, I had a similar experience because when I arrived, I didn't speak Italian. I was learning it in high school, but somehow during university, I forgot everything. And I was also very keen on learning it, and actually I was maybe in the situation where I was surrounded with more Italians than usually. So I was hanging out with them after work, and that's how I eventually learned it. But I think it's what I was not aware now when I work in completely Italian company is that I really miss it. Like working at ICGEB is like visiting many different countries in one day. And it does shape your character. I think you become really much more open. You always try to look at things also with a different perspective. I think it's important, as it is in a personal life, it's also important in a work life to be open-minded. And maybe some other very funny thing is when I moved to Rome, I said, oh my God, this is real Italy. Because Trieste is so international that sometimes you forget that you live in Italy. At least my experience was like that.
So I'm the Italian of the panel, but I grew up in Trieste, but my family is not from Trieste. I was born in Lecce, which is a small town in the south, and so I don't speak dialect. I could speak dialect, but all my life, when I was a kid at least, I was the one who was not born in Trieste. And that, as a young kid, was really a problem for me. I really felt bad about it. And for a long time, I never felt I really belonged in Trieste. And then I went to ICGEB, and all of a sudden, I was surrounded by so many people that also had a similar experience. They all came from different places, different cultures. They were very open to build a new network of friends. And then I realized this is so precious. Rather than just trying to assimilate, to become like everybody else, the diversity, I really realized how much I appreciate this be surrounded by diverse people that think differently, eat differently, make different kinds of jokes, and that is something that I cannot do without. And that's also a reason why I'm very happy that I moved to Holland. So I'm always the foreigner, and yeah, that's very special.
I think I can add on this, like, be proud of who you are and from where you come from. Like, I have passed for all the transitions where I even hate my accent because it's very Spanish accent. And then I said, why I have to be ashamed of my accent? This is telling me the capabilities that I have not only to speak Spanish, but to speak other languages. And sometimes even just by some people recognizing that you have a different accent, that connects with someone because, I hablo un poquito, or someone said something that really break the ice and start the connection. So do not be ashamed or do not try to be so hard with yourself. Treat yourself very well in a way that you feel good, because you cannot be doing anything that makes you feel good if internally you do not feel that. So always try to adapt to the place, but do not put this goal in place of your well-being. So first, I think once I learned that you have to be like firefighter, you have to think twice, 3 times before you try to save someone, because you have to save yourself before you try to help someone else. So always, I think it's a philosophy that I have in my life, and always is helpful, because I cannot do something that maybe somehow can make me feel good if, like in my inner core, I know that this is not going in the right way. So, and you can apply it in any situation, and especially when we talk about deciding career path, is something that is not trivial. You are taking a decision for your life, and when you take this kind of decisions, you have to take into account what is important for you. Where do you see yourself in the next 5, 10 years? Because if you are a person who value, for example, your cultural background, your food, you're having a coffee. I mean, I'm back in Trieste and I feel home, and I said, oh my God, I miss so much this, because in Germany it's a different settings. But let's say this is important for me, but at the same time is something that I can handle. So I can live in a different place where I do not have this. But I know some colleagues that express how important it is for them to be surrounded by family and far away from my family. And I learned to deal with that. Some people cannot. If that is your case, then you have to give priorities, because you can be in the best place ever, you can get the best salary ever, but you are unhappy. So at the end, what are you building on? So you have to really put yourself in the core of all the decisions, and then I think even if you don't have the best position or the best salary or something like that, you are still happy, and I think that's matter at the end.
So, where do you see the future of PhD careers heading now? Because in the past 5 to 6 years, as many of you mentioned, new opportunities have arisen that were not available when you guys were doing your PhD. But now these opportunities are available. So what do you see will be the future of PhD careers in academia versus PhD careers outside of academia? What is the dynamic going to look like?
So what I noticed is that sometimes the careers outside of academia were seen as plan B, as alternative careers. Even yesterday during our dinner, I said to Sannia that I really don't like that word, because it implies that working outside of academia is a second choice for someone, and I don't think it's like that for everyone. So I think that what I see in future is maybe acceptance of academia, about also existence of other careers, and also like more collaboration, because we know the necessity of basic research being translated, I think, always becomes more evident. So what I see, I think it will be always more collaboration, and like the barriers between will, I hope, be less clear.
Yeah, I actually think that in the future it will not be a big difference. Like working in the private sector, we need from academia. Like either you are in academia or you are in the private sector, both places are of equal importance for the development of the society. So like I struggle a lot trying to reproduce the data that is published from academia, but also academia is trying to get the support from private sector. So I think at the end is like really a big collaboration. There is a big misunderstanding or lack of communication between how we work in industry and academia. I think is being seen as a very diverse world. But we are always really happy and well open to make collaboration with academia, because you in academia, you have the expertise, you know how to do things, that you have dedicated the time to learn that. Unfortunately, in industry, we do not have that time, because everything is time pressure, like timelines is the biggest topic in every single meeting that we have every day, because maybe we have, I don't know, 6 months to show the feasibility of a project. And the basement of this project is always coming from academia. So being in academia will never be a wrong decision. it's always very, very important to have people in academia, and also to have someone who has experience in academia to move to the company, because even though you do not have the background to work in these settings, what is important for me is the knowledge that you have acquired from 4 years, that as a company we cannot afford to have someone getting a high salary to work in a project that we do not see a clear future. But once this knowledge is already established and produced, you are very attractive for the private sector, because you have in your hands like the knowledge that is really needed for the development of different projects. So I see academia and industry to probably being working closer together in the future, and it's just also for professors in the academia to maybe also open a little bit the mind and get make use of what can be done. Like the processes in industry are so well established that can support a lot, because for me, like, I don't know, purifying 10 grams of milligrams, no grams is a lot, but 10 milligrams of protein is something that we can do in 1 week, but maybe someone in academia can not do that fast, or do not have all the facilities that can prove that what you are generating is good. So if we make these connections and we like establish this bridge between industry and academia, we'll support each other. That's what I envision in the future. I hope it goes in that way.
And if I can add something, I think that as a base, academia shall always grow, because I think it's a place where ideas are generated. You have this freedom to really test whatever occurs to your mind. But there is also the need of the market, and I think that also academia is always more aware of that, because we see a high number of startups that are being founded by academic community. Maybe Giuseppe can speak more about that. So I think that in future we will see always more of that.
If I can also take it a step farther. So we are now discussing academia versus non-academia, but still within the kingdom of science. But there is a whole world outside there that is non-science. And I see scientists are great at solving real world problems, whatever kind of problems. That's what we are trained for. We study something to understand it and come up with an explanation and perhaps a solution if we want to change it. And it's a very powerful tool that you can apply to anything you want to do. So if at a certain point you realize, hey, it's not just science in academia or in the industry, but perhaps I want to do something completely different, it's great. And you really have a fantastic tool to get started on that.
With this, we will take some questions from the audience, if there are any.
Thank you for the talk. My question is for Erick, because in the beginning you mentioned that you decided to also do an MBA, right? Why did you decide to do that?
I also had the same question when I was so busy having a full-time job and very busy with the MBA. I said, why I did it, why I did it. And the answer is like, in my experience working in such a company, I work at the moment in R&D department where basically I somehow execute or I show the feasibility of projects that come to me. Like we need to develop a test for COVID, for example, and I'm responsible in R&D department to do that. But sometimes I'm very critical with what we do and I'm somehow upset or not that aligned with the decisions that are being taken by working in this kind of projects. And I was wondering, okay, what I can do next? How can I, because I feel responsible of taking these decisions, but in my current position I cannot. And these are decisions that are taken in a different department and you need a different background. And being responsible for such a decision has a big impact, and you need to be prepared for that. So I decided 2 years ago to enroll in this executive MBA program because as a scientist, I feel very confident about my background. I know how to work and show the feasibility of a project, but if I have to establish like a business case to really convince the leadership team why we should invest on these projects rather than in other projects, is a lot of work, is a lot of expertise that I feel I didn't have. After I just completed last week, so I'm just very fresh from the oven now. It doesn't mean that after completing the MBA I feel fully prepared for that, but what I feel is that I have like a toolbox that I can use at any time when I'm exposed to such a kind of job. At the end, experience, as you said, make clear that I'm a trainee and not a patent attorney is true, because experience is very important. I think the best way to learn is by doing mistakes, by doing it by yourself, but it's always really smart when you do that, having this toolbox that you can go back and check, okay, what can I apply from this learning? So doing an MBA is not needed or not mandatory. Many people who are working in finance, for example, they have an MBA, but they have a full career path in that sector. As a scientist, especially working in R&D department, I think I'm the only one in my department who decide to do that. And that's a bit weird because people say, which are your next steps? What do you want to do? And then you start to feel some pressure because also you want to make use of this knowledge. You don't want to lose this new knowledge, but also you don't want to lose the comfort zone that you have at the moment. But at the end, again, I go back to the same topic before, it's up to you. If you want to learn something different, you want to expose yourself to learn something else, then don't be afraid to do that and make the jump. I think it's an aging situation at the moment, because for me it's like, it's not anymore about finding another job and getting a good payment. It's more about taking a decision that is aligned with what I want to do in my private and professional life. So you have to take in consideration many aspects of this. But as far as you enjoy it, don't be afraid to take the risk. And in that transition at the moment, not clear what I will do. And this is why I feel a big gap, because I have built on my formal education, but I want to be sure that if I transition, for example, a project manager position where I will take the responsibility of, for example, deciding what projects to bring to R&D to launch a product, I will enjoy doing that, not just because I have an MBA and I have to do that. It's just a decision that takes some time, and it's fine to take the time for doing that.
Maybe you can specify what could be the careers that you could take on after this.
Wow, it's a lot. I mean, always I work for a company that gives me like a lot of security, and that is very important for me. So always the first option is, okay, I want to stay in my company. So there is a big gap, for example, in my company between finance department and R&D department. Like people who are working in the finance department do not have a deep knowledge and understanding of what means developing a project in R&D. From the other side, as an R&D professional, I have a very deep understanding of what we do, but there is a gap between these two departments. So I try, or what I envision is to really build a bridge between the two departments, because I think we can support each other, but to support each other we need someone who has an understanding of both places. Of course, I feel more comfortable in the R&D department, but by doing, for example, an executive MBA, I have gained the knowledge that can support myself and the both teams to take different decisions. This if I restrict my decisions to work in my company, but then if you go beyond that, I think you have many places where you can have an impact. I'm always thinking about, I don't know, jobs in the United Nations or any other organization that is dealing with the same topics that we have in a private company. So I like it. I like to have an impact of the job that I do. And if I want to go beyond my company, I'm always looking at myself in a position where I can take decisions, where I bring the knowledge and I can support those decisions. Because at the end, we complain a lot about the decisions that are taken in society, but what are we doing for changing that? And if you prepare yourself and you feel that you have the knowledge, you can actually make the difference and join those teams that are working in that topic. So still, let's see in the next years what is coming, but I'm very excited about that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful session. I have a couple of questions. My first question is from Nina and Giuseppe. The writing style of being an attorney or being a communication specialist are pretty different than scientific writing. So how do you transition from being a scientist to being somebody in a completely different field with a different language of writing, I would say? Another thing I would like to ask Giuseppe is, did you feel any stigma of transitioning from being a scientist to become a communication specialist? So it would be really interesting for me to know, as I'm a PhD student, and the things that you talked about are like pretty interesting and pretty cool, but to think about that path is pretty scary. So I would like to know about the stigma that comes along with when you opt for such journey. And apart from leadership skills and teamwork skills, Erick, that you talked about, I would like to know that what are other key skills that we should acquire while we are in academia for a transition that is like beyond academia. So yeah, thank you so much.
So I'll just go over the questions again. So the first question is about how to connect the different languages that are spoken outside of academia and inside academia, and this question was directed towards Nina and Giuseppe.
Yeah, it was also about the writing styles and how to transfer the writing skills acquired in academia to what I do now. So I think that first time when I started reading patent applications, I didn't understand anything, not at all. It's very dry, it seems repetitive, but I think that it's a very template writing, so it's something that you learn by writing it and by a lot of exercising. Yeah, of course, you don't know how to write it at the first 100 tries. But you're very led. There is a set of rules that is leading you on how to write it. But then again, what is most important is that you know the language of science. Eventually, if you have the basis, you will learn it because you already have that analytical mindset. You know how to separate the features from an element, and it's something like the templates of writing can be learned, but basics you build on for like decades, and yeah, you learn the template somehow. It's a practice.
For me, it was a bit the opposite. I didn't want to learn certain things. I had the feeling that things could be done differently. And movies are my big passion. And so whenever I went to a conference or a congress, I always, you sit in the meeting room and you think, oh wow, I got the feeling this is going to be a fantastic movie. And very often I got disappointed by all these hundreds of presentations. I thought, I'd love to do it differently. So rather than trying to adapt to the expectations, I try to find people that felt the same way and wanted to do it differently. And yeah.
One of the key things that I was taught as a science communicator after being trained as a molecular biologist was to turn everything or any thought or idea into bite-sized pieces that are easily digestible. So connect the dots, literally sentence by sentence, tell them what your idea is and what your thought is. And that's how my science communication mentor, Chris Smith, who is a virologist at Cambridge, that's what his focus was, like sentence by sentence, don't make things complicated, simplify things. And that was also his advice for scientific writing as well. Because he was like, you can use the technical terms, you can use more advanced techniques, but divide everything down into smaller digestible parts that actually communicate the narrative that you are trying to tell, the story that you are telling them. Anything else? The second question for Giuseppe was about the stigma from moving from being a scientist to becoming a science communicator.
Well, in between, I worked for many years in the pharmaceutical industry. And there, I didn't feel that stigma. Actually, it was very much appreciated to have scientists, and Erick, as also Erick mentioned, that could communicate their ideas effectively, who could convince their colleagues, yes, we should invest in this project, we should put money and time and resources in it. So if you go to the industry, there isn't really a stigma. It's actually very good to have that skill. And so that is my experience.
But just to add on to that question, do you not think that there's a stigma against such careers in the academic world, though? Like, yes, the industrial community, like Erick mentioned as well, and you mentioned as well, was very open to the idea that there is someone who can bridge the gap between the rest of the world and science. But from my personal experience, the academic world has been a bit reluctant to that idea. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and it's not for everybody, and the academic world is science-based, you know, and anything that is beyond data and results and science is often seen as, do you really need to do that? I mean, but on the other hand, if you really look at those leaders also in science that are really successful at getting attention for their work, at getting funding for their work, at getting the best people, the best talents out there to their group. And they are not always just the people with the best results. In my experience, those are really the people that can get people excited about what they are doing. So yes, there is a stigma, and yes, you know, we are scientists, we should do science. But if you really look at those scientists that are successful, it's more than that.
So the last question we had was for Erick, that other than leadership skills and communication skills, what are other key skills that you learned during your PhD or you could learn during your PhD that are important for the industrial experience?
I think I will not give you a list of skills that you have, but you should have to prepare, but I think I will give some advices. I think the first thing that you have to do is to prepare yourself to the first impression that you want to give whenever you approach someone for a job or something like this. And always, I know we are kind of desperate, like I'm finishing my PhD, I want to get a job, and we start sending emails or cover letters randomly to everyone. And I think this is the first mistake that you do, because it's so easy when you just see an email, and basically sometimes even people forget to delete things that were intended for someone else. So if you are sending an email, you have to prepare yourself. This is the first skill probably that you have to acquire, how to write an email. Do not write like a 5-paragraph email. You have to be precise. You have to kind of catch the attention from the person who is reading that email. You have always tried to show who you are, what you are interested, show your interest, but in a very precise way. The same when you prepare your CV. Your CV is the first contact that you will have with someone else who is looking for a person to join the team. So make sure that you prepare yourself in a way that your CV is speaking for you. And always less is more. So I used to do a lot that mistake, like adding more than removing, because for me it was very important to add everything that I have done. But you have to really filter what really makes sense, because if you are applying for a position where maybe something that you did 5 years ago or 2 years ago do not make sense, it's sad, but don't include it, because then this is just getting a space in your CV. So, and always try to adapt any kind of approach to someone that is, to any job, to adapt it. It requires time, but you have to do it. Like always use the wording that is being used in the job advertisement. Always try to adapt in such a way that when I'm reading the CV, it calls my attention. I say, oh, okay, this person is matching with what we are looking for. When we send randomly, like we have only one CV for all the application, I think you are reducing your chances to get the attention from that person. This is like the first advice. The second advice that I can give is about making use of any kind of programs or whatever you find around. Like, for example, I was in ICGEB, in Area Science Park. We have this Rebecca program, I think it's still running, where you have the opportunity to really match with a mentor that can support you. You have for sure many open questions that always you get contaminated by the people around you, because everybody has the same questions and the same fears, and you do not have a real answer. So always try to search for those programs that can support you. It can be directly joining a program. If you have the chance to do that, I really recommend to do it, because you will have the opportunity to answer many of your questions. But also educate yourself in all the single steps. Like every time that you approach someone, you send an email, ask the question and sending it in the right way, and really saying what I want to say or what the position is looking for. If you have the chance to go to an interview, again, prepare very well to go to that place to give the best impression, because an interview is already not the first, it's already the second chance and probably can change your life. So do not lose the opportunity to prepare yourself for that according to the place where you are applying. So more than skills, always think about everything that you have done beyond your PhD work. Or this is, do not, I said before, do not underestimate what you have done. Like, make a list of things that you know how to do and mention it when you are in an interview, because we give it by granted, because, okay, I know how to present, I know how to do all this set of techniques. Mention it, because this is very important to listen when you go, because sometimes maybe just because you make the mistake to don't say something that you know, because you assume that this is, of course, they know that if I have a PhD, I have these skills. Sometimes it's not like that, because it's not the common. So you have to put it in a way that sells yourself in the best way possible.
No, I think it was very thorough.
Okay, one last question.
Okay, let me complicate your life more, Erick, or all of you. So, specialist versus generalist, what is the better in the long run? And how we are talking about how accessible and how easy is this movement? So once you decide to be more generalist in your field, you know, management or whatever you mentioned, MBA and so on. So how easy will be in the long run to move back? Because we are all talking about it's great, we are all interconnected, science and everything. But what is your feeling that older you are, generalist versus specialist? Thank you.
I will not divide in that way. That's my first answer, because being a specialist, if you refer to someone in academia, took the role of a professor for 30 years, okay. In a company, you are also a specialist in the topic where you are working. So, and it's up to you to to decide to stay there, or you want to learn something different. So it's about your motivation. I do not see in that way that I'm a generalist, or probably this is a misconception, or many people working in academia that say, okay, you are not an expert anymore. I had a talk to a friend of mine a few days ago, and she was looking for a job, and I said, I know you like what you do, but I do not like this kind of job because it's very simple. I said, thank you for sharing that way of how you perceive like that, but I think it's actually completely different. When you are doing these jobs, as Nina mentioned at some point, the responsibility that you have on your shoulders is really hard. Like you show Western blot, and decisions like about, I don't know, $1 million being invested on a project can be taken. So you have a lot of responsibility because you become an expert in that topic. So you are not a generalist because you are working in such a department now. Or, for example, in my case, if I move in 2 years to do a different role in finance, for example, I received the responsibility, or became the responsibility to take decisions where I am the expert. And I think that is the main difference. In a lab, you can do a mistake, you take a decision, so one lose 3 months doing something that doesn't make sense, and then you change the gears and you say, okay, let's focus in a different way. Working in a private sector, every decision, every presentation, everything that you show has an impact. And you have to be extremely careful about that, because it's about your reputation, but it's also about the investment that the company is doing. And of course, it goes on levels, depends on where you are. This has a stronger impact than others, but always you are a specialist, I will say, when you are in a company, because you are responsible for that, and sometimes you are the only one, sometimes you are part of a team, but even if you are a part of a team, the team is responsible for those decisions.
Of course, tough question, but I would say science-wise, in my case, it's generalist, but then in a current role, you are specialist because you are always, you're specializing in your job, and sometimes it does feel like a tunnel career, in my case. And personally, once I realized it, I had a little panic attack, because you realize, okay, I have this identity crisis, I'm not a scientist anymore. I cannot go back, so plan your career wisely, because once maybe you're in academia, you have all these options open, but once you, maybe, yeah, Giuseppe will probably not agree with me, but once you do that step outside, it can lead to, you know, tunnel career and specializing.
Thank you for all of your answers and all of the questions. We have unfortunately run out of time, but this was a very interesting question that was raised at the very end. And thank you for the panelists for their time, for coming and taking the effort and having this conversation with us. Just wanted to add that the next ICGB panel will be tomorrow at 3 p.m. if anyone's interested. And with that, I'll conclude this session and thank my panelists for their time. Thank you.